What's up, everyone? This is Tranquil Toys. Today I'm taking a look at the new Masterverse Clawful figure. This is a figure that I've been waiting for a while. I was excited when they first revealed pictures for it, and now I'm excited to finally have it in hand. And so I'm going to take a look at this figure today. It's going to be a pretty basic review, not going to spend too much time, but I'll be taking a look at the detail, the accessories, the articulation, and then some size comparisons and some ideas for customs that you can do with this figure. For the most part, I have nothing negative to say in terms of the sculpt, but I will say that some people have been arguing over, the kind of head sculpt that they like for this character. In the original cartoon, he looked a lot different. He had big, bushy eyebrows. In my opinion, it would have been good if they had two heads, one with that classic style and one with this style. Another thing I don't like is the sort of back armor or shell. It doesn't really fit with the rest of the look, in my opinion. It does look kind of cool sticking out from the front. They're like horns or something, which is kind of cool, but I would have preferred if this was the shield instead of this one. This is a shield that we've seen already. It's like the shield that came with Tila. I think it's the exact same, actually. So that's kind of a bummer that they threw in this old shield. They should have made this the shield, in my opinion. And you can kind of make it work that way, but it's not really meant for that. He also came with this armband, so that's just a soft plastic that stretches over the bicep, and it just stays there, and it fits in with the rest of the shell motif, lobster shell or crab shell. I like the wash that they gave the claws over the red, so it's not just bright red, and the same goes for the chest armor and the torso, and then the loincloth at the bottom here. So I really appreciate how they added some different paints on that, just to make it stand out a bit more and look different and not as plain. And the boots are a different plastic, so that makes them stick out, and it fits with the belt. I'm not sure why they went with this design for the feet. It doesn't really look like a crab foot. I mean, crabs don't really have feet. It comes with the extra chest harness here, or chest armor. The jewel in the middle is done pretty nicely. There's not really any other color other than the gold plastic on the harness, and this just comes off. You have to take the head off, and it goes around the neck. So you got to take that off and then unhook it from the hooks over here on the back of the harness. Another problem is that the harness doesn't go all the way. Like, you can put the belt through the loop, but it's going to come off just because it's not sized correctly. So I'm not sure what went wrong there, but that is something that you have to deal with. So the shield is pretty lame, and honestly so is this other accessory, this weapon. It looks kind of like the back of a missile or something, like a rocket or a bomb. So it just looks kind of weird. I guess it's supposed to be some kind of mace weapon, but it just looks weird and doesn't fit with the character, in my opinion. And I do understand that this weapon came with the vintage figure, so that's the reason for why they included it here. But obviously you can give them different weapons, so I'll be doing that later towards the end of the video. And the actual chest, this extra chest armor, is actually a callback to the cartoon. Although in the cartoon, I think he just had a red body. He didn't have this crab shell thing. And the articulation is pretty much the same as every other Masterverse figure, and there's not really any hindrances. There are in the shoulders, but I'll just go ahead and start with the head. So you can look up that much, which is pretty good, down that much, which is okay, and it does kind of pivot back and forth just a tiny bit, but that adds a little bit more emotion to the character. No tilt. You can kind of tilt, but it doesn't really tilt in the way that it should, or especially when you have, like an actual dumbbell joint in the neck. They don't have that. I know Mattel doesn't do dumbbell joints for some reason. They have like a kind of like an old school way of doing the joints, so that does limit the articulation you're able to get with the head. But like I said, it's pretty much the same as every other Masterverse figure. And then for the shoulders, they go up that far. You can rotate them all around, but it's going to kick out a little bit because of the shoulder armor. And then of course the bicep swivel works as you'd expect. Double elbows. The top elbow joint is kind of tight, so you're going to have to mess with it a little bit, but you're able to get past 90 degrees. Then we get to the wrist here, and this is something that I didn't expect them to do. So they kind of missed the point of articulation here. They have the swivel. They don't have the hinge, which is, in my opinion, I think they could have engineered it to have a hinge, but they didn't, and I guess that's because they had to make room for the hinge joint on the claw to open and close, which I really do like that they did that. I just don't like that they got rid of the hinge in the wrist that the figures normally have. So I think they could have done it in a way where they had both, but they just choose to sacrifice the hinge to have the claw open and close. But again, I really do like that they included that. So that's cool, and the same thing goes for the other hand. Although one difference is, of course, one's way bigger than the other. Another difference is that this one, so this hand actually comes off. This one does not. It probably can, but it doesn't just come off like straight off. You're gonna have to do some work, maybe heat it up. I'm not sure what it looks like under there, but maybe you could just heat it up and take it off. I don't really want to do that. Anyways, this claw is a lot bigger, and it opens and closes, and that's really cool. That's pretty much the gimmick of this figure, which again I like about the He-Man figures. There's certain gimmicks with the figures, and this one, you know, has the claws that open and close. So that's really cool. I like how they were able to include that. And again, the detail is very nice. You know, you got that bubbly texture, and then you got the teeth of the claw. It also gives me Mr. Krabs vibes. And getting into the torso articulation, it's pretty much like you'd expect. You get decent back. You get pretty good forward, probably better than some other figures. So that's really cool. You can get him into some hunched over poses to make him look, you know, more like a bad guy. And then of course, this is the new style torso, so it can make a full 360 turn. And I really appreciate that they're moving forward with that. And then you can tilt side to side, which is a decent amount. Another thing I wish it would have had is open and closed jaw. I think they could have done that. I think we might have seen that before with some figures in the Masterverse line. Maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking of some other figures. But I think they could have just gone the extra step and added jaw articulation. But they didn't, so it is what it is. And then we get the lower torso swivel, which works as you'd expect. And again, this is something that I keep mentioning, but it doesn't really line up with the belt in the bottom. Not sure if the camera's going to pick that up because of my lighting, but yeah, that just kind of bothers me. I prefer the lower torso to hang over the belt a little bit rather than the belt hanging over the lower torso articulation. That's just my opinion, though. And now getting into the legs, they kick up that far, they kick out that far, pretty good. And then of course thigh swivel, knee joints, same thing as the arms. They were a little bit tight, so you want to loosen them up first. Just carefully kind of try to move them up and down, and then eventually you'll get them free. The rotation works as you'd expect, and the ankles are pretty good. A tiny bit loose. They hinge forward, they hinge back and forward. It goes forward that far, back that far, and then they rotate on the hinge there that far. It's kind of at a weird angle, and because of that he can kind of do the splits. So I mean, the figure itself is really good. I really like how they pulled it off. Now the accessories are kind of lacking. Like I mentioned before, this weapon is kind of lame. I'm probably never ever going to use that. And this back piece too, I wish it was a shield. You know, like imagine if he had that as a shield like that. Like that would be awesome. I'll probably try to figure out a way to make it like that. And then the chest harness is also pretty cool. I can use it for other figures. It doesn't really fit 100% on this figure, which is kind of a problem because, you know, that's that cartoon look. So you can't really get the look that he had in the cartoon. It's kind of unfortunate that it doesn't fit. And then you get the Tila shield that we've seen before, and this is really disappointing that they threw this shield in. I guess maybe it was like the vintage figure, but besides that, I'm never going to use that accessory. Now we'll get into some size comparisons, and if you guys hear that sound in the background, I apologize for it. I do have my fan on. It's getting kind of hot in the studio, so I just got to use that fan to remain cool. Anyways, we'll get into the size comparisons, and the first one, it's got to be Skeletor, because this is one of Skeletor's henchmen. So Skeletor is kind of big. He kind of makes Clawful look kind of small, and it is a deluxe figure. I think they could have scaled him up a little bit because he just has like a really small head, in my opinion. And if they just scaled him up a little bit, you know, to make his head the same size as the rest of the characters, he would have looked a lot more imposing, and it would have just been a different take on the character. I know in the original cartoon he was more like a regular human-sized character, but I think giving him that bigger size would have made him stand out, especially because they went and redesigned some of the parts. They could have just done that just to, you know, just add to the redesign to make it a little bit better. And then here we got the Vicron figure. Now the Vicron figure is actually really tall, so he kind of makes Clawful look really small, and that's kind of the point I was trying to make before. They should have scaled him up a little bit, just enough to be as tall as, you know, the Conan or the Vicron figure, or even bigger. I think maybe as big as Beastman. That would have been cool. So I think Clawful should have been closer to this size. He's not that much bigger than Clawful. He is a little bit, but he is wider, and I think the Clawful figure could have benefited from being just a bit taller, a bit wider. That would have made him look a lot cooler. And then next to a Masterverse female figure, She-Ra. And to me, this size does not look correct. I think She-Ra's a little bit too tall, but I think that's mostly the fault of the Clawful figure, especially when next to the classic He-Man, the Masterverse, classic look He-Man. He just kind of overshadows Clawful. That's the way I see it. I think He-Man looks really big, and he's supposed to be big, but I don't think he's supposed to be bigger than, Clawful. I think it should have been about the same size, or again, Clawful should have been a little bit bigger. And here's the McFarlane Batman, the Barbarian Batman or whatever, and again, he's a lot bigger. This is kind of just a quick custom or kit bash that I showed off in the last review, so I think that looks pretty cool. And here's Grizzlor. And lastly, here's Marvel Legends Hulk, and of course he's way bigger than Clawful. Now I'm going to show off some different customs that you can make with this figure. So we're just going to swap some parts here and there on other figures. You can put the claw hand on any Masterverse figure. So there's what that looks like. And there's with the Clawful head. So if you were to paint the body red, this would be like the cartoon look of Clawful, and that would be pretty cool. And this is kind of what it looks like when you use his back armor as a shield. He's just kind of holding it from the neck strap, and then he's got a sword. I think that's a McFarlane sword. So that looks pretty cool. The shield doesn't really work as a shield. It just looks kind of weird, and then if you move it, it'll just dangle there like he's holding a purse or something. Here's the Clawful head on Beastman. That looks pretty cool, honestly. And there's Beastman with the Clawful armor and head. The armor doesn't really fit. The chest is way too big for the armor. But other than that, I guess it's a pretty good base for a custom if you want to go through with this. And here's the Beastman head on the Clawful body, and it is custom painted to look more like the cartoon. Although some of the paint's coming off, I'll have to hit that with some paint sealer. Other than that, I guess that looks kind of interesting. And here's Clawful with some beer. So that's one of the cool things about these claw hands. You can pretty much put whatever you want. You can put different sized accessories in his hands because they're just claws and they just open and close, and you can adjust the size. And there's him holding an axe. So again, he can pretty much hold any weapon, which is good because, like I mentioned before, I'm probably never going to use this thing. So it gives me a lot of options. There's Clawful with the fur. That's really weird. A lobster with fur. Then you can also replace his claw hand with a human hand. So this is the hand from He-Man, and he can just hold an axe like regular. So if you want to do that, that is possible. Here's what the shell looks like on He-Man. So I guess maybe he killed a giant crab and now he's wearing it as a trophy. I mean, I guess that looks kind of cool. There he is with the Marvel Legends Dormammu head. That looks kind of interesting, but doesn't really make sense. The colors do match pretty nice though. Here he is with the Marvel Legends Red Skull head. It's pretty hard to come up with head swaps for this guy just because he's so different and not really, there's not much that's going to fit with him. So everything is just going to end up looking weird, I think, without some extra steps to make it fit all together. So that's pretty much everything I could come up with right now. Let me know what you guys think of the figure. I think it looks pretty awesome, especially with using the armor as a shield. I'm probably going to have to cut this neck strap off just to make it make more sense. And then I put some tack on the back, so that's how he's holding it up like that. And I think that looks really awesome. Let me know what you guys think about this figure. Let me know what you think about this review. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments or on Instagram. You can follow me at TrendKillToys on Instagram. I'm going to try to post more pictures. It's just kind of hard recording videos and also trying to make time to take pictures and post them. So I'm working on that. Anyways, guys, I gotta go. I'll see you in the next one.